俺は悲しい。その悲しさには意味がない。というより、なんで悲しいんだろ
う。いろいろ考えたんだ。決め手がない。だから悲しみの理由を探した。わかるか？
はい！わかります！
悲しいだけで俺の人生わかるかお前に？
はい！わかります！
悲しいぞ！
はい！
悲しいぞ俺は！
はい！悲しいです！
お前私のことで修行するか？
はい！
Love Exposure is written and directed by Sion Sono, and it stars Takehiro Nishijima and Hikari Mitsushima. There's no way I wasn't going to break out the phone for that one. So Love Exposure is a Japanese film that came out in 2008 that's been on my radar for at least a few years now. And honestly, I've heard nothing but great things about this film, but one thing that definitely kept me from watching it up until now is the fact that it essentially has a 4-hour runtime. I don't think I've ever seen a film and actually just sat down and watched it from beginning to end that lasted a complete 4 hours. I mean, it's like 3 hours and 57 minutes or 51 minutes, something like that. But it's 4 hours long. And that was one thing I was like, oh god, like, what if I watch a 4-hour film and I didn't get anything out of it, I didn't find it engaging? Because I'm not one to, like, just walk out of a film and stop it. Like, once I start a film, I go through with it no matter how much I'm hating it. And I guess I just respect the art form too much just to do that to it. I can't even think of a single time where I ever walked out of a film or just stopped it and actually didn't come back to it. But that being said, I finally watched Love Exposure. I know there's quite a few out there, I'm looking at you, Megan, that really wanted me to watch this film and were really excited for me to watch it and talk about it. And now that I've finally seen it, I can say that it was a 4 hours well spent, because this film was just a blast for me. I had such a fun time watching this movie, and this film just gives you so much to really enjoy as you're watching it, because despite it being 4 hours long, it's just so incredibly entertaining. It's so incredibly satirical. It's clever. It's stupid. The romance in it actually works, even though it can get really outrageous. And it's just such an odd film, because this is a film that 1 second it can be really just over the top, just goofy and silly, but like in a few minutes it somehow manages to really feel grounded in something and makes you really feel for these characters emotionally, and also be thought-provoking in different thematic ways. Because this film actually does tackle more difficult, deep, thought-provoking themes that have to do with religion, cults. Obviously, love is a huge part of that. Because I was really impressed by how this film was able to use satire as a medium in order to point out certain truths and absurdities about the appeal to cults and religion. And, you know, like I said, also love. Because as I stated, this film can be extremely ridiculous and just be off-the-wall stupid. But at the same time, it's genuinely clever. And I can see a handful of people watching this film, you know, watching like the first 45 minutes and just checking out because of just how absurd and over the top it is. But for me, like, it was just so entertaining, and it's definitely purposeful. Like, I totally was on board for what this film was doing in terms of its satirical conveyance. And even though it was off the wall ridiculous, I totally got why it was doing these things. And it's also just, at the same time, it's building these characters too, because the characters in this film are just incredibly enjoyable to watch. These characters are just, you can tell that Sion Sono really knows how to establish character, give them nuances, because none of these characters feel one-dimensional at all. I think all the characters in this film definitely have a certain complexity to them. They don't feel bland, and they're just so incredibly enjoyable to watch. They're really charming, and this is just a really, really fun movie, and a lot of that is thanks to how enjoyable these characters are. Takehiro's character Yu was probably my favorite character in this film. And just the route that I don't want to give too much away, but his character goes down a road in terms of how his character is established. He goes down this road that has to do with perverts, and I'm sorry, that shit was absolutely hilarious. I had such a fun time watching all that shit, and it's just unlike anything that I personally ever seen when I was watching it. I'm like, I was trying to wrap my head around like, what kind of fucking movie is this? But it was just really entertaining, and just the comedy just really landed. And again, it's a really, even though it's really funny, it's really ridiculous, it's really satirical, it also served as a really nuanced foundation for the character. And that goes along for pretty much all the characters in this film. But I think, was definitely my personal favorite. But what I gotta say also about this film is that this film has a villain character that I just hated so fucking much. And that's a really great compliment to give to a villain, because, you know, there's one angle to look at it that, you know, you make a villain just like really relatable to the point where like you don't really hate them because you understand where they're coming from. But at the same time, I think a villain can succeed by, you know, having some sort of understanding where they're coming from, but at the same time just doing these manipulative things that just drive you up the wall, because they're just, it's so sociopathic. And just how she pulls the strings throughout this entire film, you just feel so helpless with the main characters that it just really aggravates you. There's moments in this film that really made me angry, and it's a huge compliment to the film, because the villain, I just really wanted to see her get defeated in this film. And you know, I'm not going to give away whether or not she does, but definitely the conclusion behind her character was certainly unconventional, and it didn't take some sort of cheap way out of it. And she was a really effective villain, and like I said, you actually do somewhat see where she's coming from, and that's another great thing about this film. They all have particular backstories, and they also have their own current stories that give you an understanding of who they are and why they are the way they are. But again, I think the most impressive thing to me about this film was just the way it handled its themes. Because obviously love is a huge theme in this film as well, and the film intentionally gives you this really skewed, unconventional way to look at love and true love. And it's really hard to go about this film in the way that he did, and, you know, have people take it seriously and have people find it thought-provoking, because it really does get out there, and it really is skewed in a lot of different ways. But he definitely gets you to see it in a more liberal sense, that's not really confined by, you know, that many barriers. And he definitely tries to open people's minds and their views on love. And the same with all the other themes. Like I said, cults and religions. He definitely dives into the appeal and how when people feel helpless, they can be really pressured and manipulated, emotionally manipulated into believing these certain things. And when you're confined by these, you know, strict guidelines, whether it's a cult or a religion, you know, it can have a really negative effect on certain people in the way that they behave and the way they go about making decisions. And I thought this film really conveyed all of those themes beautifully. And on top of that, the film doesn't feel like it's blatantly one-sided as well. This, to me, felt like an incredibly well-rounded film in terms of how it wanted to dive into these themes. And it didn't come off like something that was just being overly preachy and trying to hit me over the head with a certain message. And instead, like, dives into all these things. And yeah, it criticizes it, but it tries to shed some light and certain truths about these things. And it's all wrapped up in a story that is just absurd, but also relatable in certain ways, but also incredibly funny and engaging and incredibly satirical. And this was the most fun I've ever had with a 4-hour film. And the only real, like, criticism I can say is that there were moments, like in the first act, when I should stop saying first, second, and third act, because this film doesn't really feel like it has acts. It just feels like it has like 6 different sections or chapters or whatever. I forgot how many chapters there were, but there's like 6, 7 chapters or something like that. But anyway, this film feels like, at least in the first hour, I guess, like the first hour and a half, there were moments where they were establishing certain characters, specifically Yoko's character, where I wouldn't say I was bored, but I was getting a little bit less interested than I was when the film was establishing Yu's character. There's only a small section of the film that I felt like wasn't keeping my total engagement. And there's also an argument to be made that, you know, it's perhaps a little bit too long, but it was just so incredibly entertaining and engaging throughout that, you know, I personally really wouldn't say that because even though, yes, it's 4 hours, this was just a blast to watch, and I just had such a fun time with it. And even though it's 4 hours, I could see myself rewatching this movie, not only 2 or 3 times, but, you know, 5 or 10 times throughout my entire life because it's just a really entertaining film, but it's not just dumb fun. This film is also incredibly thought-provoking. It's insightful. It does a great job at pointing out absurdities and realities of really important subjects like religion, philosophy, love, cults, and, you know, where the line gets blurred in between those things. And, you know, for those who watch my channel, I love films that dive into that type of subject. My Mother Explained video is just a shitstorm of heated debate in the comment section regarding that subject. One of these days, you guys should just not watch the video, but, you know, if you want to watch the video, go ahead. But the comment section is, I think, more entertaining than my damn video. But anyway, this film was such a blast. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm going to give Love Exposure a 9 out of 10. I'm so glad I finally got to watch this film. It was well worth my time, and I obviously highly recommend everybody who has not seen this film to give your 4 hours of your day to this film, because I don't think you're going to be disappointed. Maybe the kind of absurdity of this film will maybe throw you off, but I think that there's going to be enough there for you to get something out of it and to really have a good time with it. So please check out this film if you haven't already. By the way, guys, if you didn't know yet, I started a Patreon account. So just to keep it quick and simple, if you pledge $1 a month on my Patreon, you will get access to vote in the weekly polls. There's a poll right now on Patreon, and the films that are battling it out are El Topo, I Stand Alone, Happiness, and Julian Donkey Boy. So if you want to be part of that action and have some voting power on the films that I watch, please pledge $1. I'll eventually come out with a Patreon video where I'll just talk about all the perks and everything. But for right now, if you want to check out all the tiers, I'll leave a link in the description box below, so please check that out. And please give me your thoughts on Love Exposure. If you've seen it already, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. And please don't forget to request films, because even if you don't pledge anything, your request will still make it into the polls. So please leave your film request down in the comment section. I would really enjoy that. And if you really enjoy what I had to say about Love Exposure, please give this video a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.